In late January this year, the National Population and Talent Division, or NPTD, a department within the Prime Minister's Office of the Government of Singapore, released the Population White Paper titled A Sustainable Population for a Dynamic Singapore. The paper details how our low TFR, or total fertility rate, will, over the next 2 decades, cause our workforce to shrink due to a rapidly aging population without younger replacements. The solution, according to the paper, is taking in enough immigrants to make up for the shortage in younger people, as well as encourage more families in an attempt to raise the TFR. After a short parliamentary debate in January, the Population White Paper was endorsed in early February. This despite the large number of alarmed responses from many Singaporeans due to the paper's projection of a population of 6.9 million by 2030. This led to the first of 3 protests at Hong Lim Park in mid-February. Thousands gathered there to voice their opinions on what the white paper detailed as the plan over the next 2 decades. The protest was significant enough that it was even featured on international news programs. The next 2 protests were smaller in turnout, but the sentiments were largely the same. Arguments and complaints generally revolved around the issues of overcrowding, job availability, and dilution of Singaporean culture and identity. We spoke to 4 different Singaporeans regarding their views on these somewhat contentious issues. First off, we asked if they had felt this sense of overcrowding in their own day-to-day experiences, and what their thoughts were on the space situation in Singapore.
I do think that places are getting overcrowded. I generally avoid MRTs. I generally avoid peak hour traffic. I generally try to avoid Orchard as much as possible. I do feel that sometimes there's a little bit too much people at certain areas, but I also do think that these things can be solved by improving the infrastructure and like putting up alternative places to go to and hang out for people, as opposed to Orchard being a central area and stuff like that.
Essentially, at this current moment, I don't feel any effects of overcrowding, given that I mostly commute by train. And even though you can get a notch a bit crowded, but it's still manageable. It's not impossible. However, with another 2 million increase, I'm not sure how are we ready infrastructurally to manage that increase. Given the network of MRTs system that we have and the considerable focus on using public transport, I believe we should be quite alright given the increase of 2 million. However, for private cars, that could be a bit of a challenge because as it is already, we are facing quite a bit of traffic jams. So with another 2 million, I don't know how is that going to fit in.
Every day, I heard from some that they have to actually wait for the 3rd or 4th train. Some people have to wait for the 5th train during peak hour before they can board the train to go to work. So I think that's a clear sign there's overcrowding in our trains. And we are a very small island. I don't know how we can house close to 7 million people. I think right now we are 5.2 or 5.3 million. Already, we're feeling the overcrowding part of it. So if we squeeze in another 1.5 million people by 2030, I think it's going to be very bad. People will feel that, they just don't want to go out during the weekend. There are people everywhere. The trains are crowded, the malls are crowded, the buses are crowded. I think even the schools are crowded now with foreign students. So I think this is something that Singaporeans are not happy about. I think they ought to be more planning.
Well, population per square kilometer in Singapore are 8,000, whereas in Barcelona, my city, we are 14,000. So much more, and if you go to Barcelona, you will not feel that Barcelona is overcrowded. So probably this is because we have almost double MRT lines in Barcelona and people are more scattered. Here you have a clear center, which is where we are now. And in Barcelona you don't have a clear center. So people are everywhere. Whereas in Singapore, people tend to focus on the center area. But if you are in Punggol, you can't see any crowd.
According to the white paper, most Singaporeans are expected to move into PMET, or professional, managerial, executive, and technical jobs over the next 2 decades. However, some have argued that if the intake of immigrants stays at 30,000 per year, Considering that we take in more skilled foreign talent than unskilled labor, more Singaporeans will lose these jobs to foreigners. We asked our unofficial panel for their take on the issue.
Is it favorable for a company to hire foreign workers since we don't have to pay CPF for them? We don't have to contribute the extra 16% or so on their salaries, right? I think currently, as far as I can tell with the people that we have hired so far, it is definitely slightly more expensive to hire a foreign worker. It's true that they do not get CPF, they do not get the employer contribution CPF, but what we do have to do is we have to pay a foreign worker levy. I am not entirely 100% on what how the levy actually works, but what I do know is that for one person that is a non-Singaporean in this company, we have to pay way more than slightly, I think it's not way more, slightly above about 20% of their salary as a levy every month to keep him employed. And that definitely means that he is definitely more expensive than to keep than a Singaporean.
See, I think it's a sad hard truth. A foreigner come in, go to poly, study, and he can immediately work after graduation, but a Singaporean can't. It's to serve 2 years of army. So I think that's against us again. And I think the bosses will probably hire as a foreigner because he can start work straight away and you don't have reservist duties. So this again something that I think the government got to look after us. Yeah, we are always at the losing end. Singaporeans are always at the losing end. And I think the national service factor has to be really reconsidered, right, for the good of our country.
Where you have the fear that higher that you have higher tier jobs where foreigners will always come in and take like a CEO position, a management level position and stuff like that. I think that it is a fact that jobs like this are rare, and these positions are meant to be extremely competitive, and companies need to do what is best for themselves in order to survive. And it's a fact that a vast majority of Singaporeans will never get jobs like this. This is the same not just for Singapore, for anywhere else in the world. Doesn't matter whether you're Malaysian, whether you're American, or whether you're Australian or from London or whatever.
Yeah, I think right now we have received quite a fair bit of emails from jobless Singaporeans. I think the tricky thing is they're quite young, Some are in the 20s or 30s. So I feel, Prime Minister is saying, they allow in foreign PMEX so that Singaporeans can gain from there. But I feel they're replacing us. I think we receive a lot of emails from jobless Singaporeans that, they're replaced and the foreigner come in to take over their jobs. I think we are not seeing 40s or 50s people who are jobless, but even 30s and some are even in the 20s. So I think it's going to be a big problem if you bring in more people. Because when you bring in one foreigner, you have to give them a job, else they can't survive here. I think a job to them is a job loss for Singaporeans. Yeah.
Well, the idea of foreigners like me coming to Singapore to take over jobs that should be for Singaporeans, or not, maybe not should be, but that should be more exposed to Singaporeans instead of to foreign talent, is something that I understand, but I have to say that it's a very dangerous idea, because when you say that, you are suggesting that you are entitled to have a job in the same place where you were born. This is not actually true. Nobody born in Germany is entitled to have a job in Germany. When I say entitled, I mean that IKEA, Nokia, or any company registered in Berlin is not forced by law to give a job to a German, because that makes no sense. Companies hire according to curriculum and to capacities, not to where are you from. So that's a point in order to destroy meritocracy, to say that people should be hired regarding the place where they have been born. This is like saying that I should be hired because I'm bald, or that somebody should be hired because he's black.
Yeah, I've seen, heard and seen situations before where someone from the company overseas was heading up a certain team or a certain desk, and when he left or vacated the role, we have seen that they are bringing someone else from overseas. There could be possibilities that the staff locally maybe might not be experienced in that role in that sense, or might not be ready to take on the role. That is why I feel that we should have more training, more programs in place for such situations where the head or team leader or person in a position leaves, we can actually replace that role.
Given that Singapore has such a good infrastructure and it's a globalized city and stuff like that, companies typically look everywhere around the world to fill positions like this, and it's to their benefit. And as such, if a local guy wants a position like this, he's not competing with himself. He's not competing with just the population alone, with the local population alone. He definitely is competing with everyone else in the world, and I think that's perfectly natural.
There's something to say about the quota system in Singapore, forcing companies registered here to hire locals, a specific amount of locals. So, first, if you do that, you are distorting the market and you are not giving equal opportunities to everybody. That law would be a scandal in the European Union, would be considered straightforward xenophobic. The second point to be mentioned is that a quota suggests the idea that Singaporeans are not ready to find a job by themselves, and therefore the government must force companies to give them jobs. That's not true, because Singaporeans are competitive and they are ready to find a job by their own. They don't need help, and they should realize that they don't need help.
Lastly, the issue of a unique culture and identity being diluted to the point of being lost over time due to the societal, familial, and cultural changes that the influx of foreign talent becoming citizens here will bring. Especially since by 2030, only 1 in every 2 to 3 Singaporeans you meet would have been born here, if the predictions in the white paper come true. Unsurprisingly, this is the area where some comments made by Singaporeans are accused of being xenophobic. The Singaporeans we spoke with had some interesting perspectives to share.
For example, during Christmas, during Chinese New Year, we go to our friends' house. During Hari Raya, we visit. During Deepavali, we visit our friends' houses. So we have been intertwined into that way that that's Singaporean for me in that sense. All 4 or 5 communities combined into the festivities, the food, the culture, the social assimilation, you may call it. For citizens who are not born here, I believe over the years, because most of them will have their families here, I believe they will form part of the social fabric over time, given that the majority of them will be staying in HDB estates, and the kampung spirit that is there will probably form in them, and this will carry on with the continuance of this will carry on through our next generation. And I believe, I strongly believe that there is a very high and likely possibility, given that our social landscape will remain the same in terms of having diverse population of Chinese, Malay, Indian, and others.
Yeah, I think it's true. You need to put more people in if you want the country to keep chugging along, because aging population is a problem. Now, I'm not going to say that because I'm a foreigner, but honestly, I can't see any problem with having a lot of foreigners in a place, as long as they first abide by the law and second, pay taxes. So if they do these things, or just one, because if you pay taxes, you're already abiding by the law. If you do this, you are doing what you are supposed to do. So you are not bribing, you are not murdering, you are not stealing, not raping, you don't nothing wrong, you work, you pay taxes. That's what being a good citizen anywhere in the world is, here in London or in Tokyo. So if you do that, it doesn't matter where are you from.
The white paper states clearly that by 2030, 45% of our population will comprise of foreigners. So there's like 1 in 1 now. I think I agree now. If you take the train, you could hardly hear Singlish anymore. But a lot of people are speaking in very different languages. I think it somehow gives you the impression that, hey, you're not in your own country, You're somewhere in India, or you're somewhere in Philippines, or maybe you're somewhere in Thailand. because there are just so many foreigners here. I think people feel they lost a certain identity, they lost a certain rootedness in the country. Like, hey, I'm in this country, but yet I'm like not in this country, you know. I don't see my own people. I see more foreigners than myself. Like, I stay in Pongo. I think Pongo has many Indians and many Filipinos and Chinese. So I can hardly see my own people there. I think it's something that I'm quite sad, quite ashamed to be here. Yeah, I wish there are more people like us. I know there are many Singaporeans that migrated. There are close to, I think, 300,000 Singaporeans that are living abroad now. So I think we might see more of them living. I think this will add to the problem here. We are having more foreigners here, and yet a lot of our people are going off. It's going to be a big issue. Yeah, you ask me how to solve it, I don't know. I don't have the solution.
There's no clear, defined way of seeing what actually is Singaporean and what actually is not. And another way to put it is like, let's say you have a clique of friends, a group of friends, and they're very cliquish. They have their own habits, they have their own inside language and inside jokes and stuff like that. For a foreigner to try and integrate themselves in that clique is very difficult, right? And the group must try and accept them. I think this country is trying to get to that state. What it needs to first form is this set of rules, this set of inside jokes, this set of attitudes and language and behaviors that they share that makes them gel together. And I think that's missing at this point of time.
And I want to add something else. Half population in Sydney are foreigners, and it's one of the most important cities in the world with an astonishing intangible market, financial market, intellectual market. It's a growing city in all the senses because they have so many foreigners. So if you pick up the good foreigners, you are doing a good job, and that's what you are supposed to do.
I know we are not giving birth, right? We are, in fact, probably one of the lowest population growth in the world, right? But I think more can be done to allow and help us, those who are married, to give birth, because a lot of us are not giving birth. Like, for example, I only have one daughter. I wish I can have more, but the living costs, our wages and all that are factors that distract us from wanting to have one more child. And I'm 52, I don't think I want another child at my age. But how about those who are younger, those who want to have more children, but they don't want to because they can't afford it. And wages are not improving. Inflation is going sky high. I think this is one factor that I think the government can look into, help us to want to give birth.
So where does that leave us? Well, clearly we still have much to discuss and debate as the next few years herald new changes as yet unforeseen. But we hope our short feature has enlightened our viewers on the current main issues of contention when it comes to the Population White Paper, a document which will guide the shaping of Singapore's landscape over the next 2 decades for us all.
By me, oh, stand now, oh, stand by me, one more time. And darling, stand by me, oh, stand by me, oh, stand now, oh, stand by me. No matter how much money you've got, or a friend you've got, you're gonna need somebody to stand by.